Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show. I'm your host, Sharon Harding, and today we're hanging out with keyboard modder Alexotos and checking out the Intel NUC 11 Extreme kit. So we are live, everybody, and we are taking questions from the audience. So if you have anything you'd like to ask, just drop your question into the chat on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try to discuss it live on air. So here with me today, we have Tom's Hardware Senior Editor and PC Prince, Andrew Friedman. What's up, Andrew?
You know, you're starting to repeat yourself with those, so I think you either got to brainstorm or retire those. But otherwise,
I've called you a prince already.
One time, yeah.
Oh man, you're right. I do have to work on it or kick you off the show. We'll see which is easier. I'm also very excited to welcome to the show keyboard modder and YouTuber Alexotos. What's up, Alex?
Hi, everybody. Not too much. Just finished the day of work today. Now we're just sitting here hanging out, talking about tech stuff. So there's that.
Awesome. That's what we love to do. So, Alex, as I said, you are a keyboard modder. I bet you probably have had to explain this to people before. Like, what exactly would you say you do?
Well, I guess in terms of the social content stuff, I build keyboards live on stream. Most of the times it's on Twitch. Sometimes I do like sound tests and all that other kind of fun stuff on YouTube. Majority's on Twitch though. So we go through the steps of like a bare bones kit, which kind of looks like this, where there's nothing inside the PCB and the plate hasn't been installed yet, all the way to a finished product. So it's pretty fun. A lot of different mods that go into a keyboard really to make it your own. So that's the majority of what I do. And we tell stories on stream too.
You tell stories, like ghost stories? What do you mean?
Stories, weird stories about my day. Like I have a bad mail encounter every single day. So it's pretty funny.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. So you build keyboards live on air. That's, to me, that's so much. Like I could barely show a keyboard on this live stream holding it up straight and visibly. Your hands don't get all shaky and things like that. You're a pro by now, I guess.
I mean, like my hands shake naturally, so I can lean on that. But when I first started, it was definitely nerve-wracking, especially the streaming experience, like having people watch you do something, especially fine, delicate work. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking, but I can get away with it.
Very cool. So do you have anything cool that you're working on now that you can show us? You get a peek of your modding life?
Yeah, so these are the Karas from RamaWorks. These are the round ones. So this one here is built, just haven't put keycaps on it. So they have some new colors for a Sequence 2 version they're doing. So they have this beautiful pink, which I believe this one here is called Musk or Momo, one of the two names. So we're going to be building this. And the nice thing about these are more affordable entry levels to, I guess, the keyboard world, the custom world. And we have this beautiful orange, which I really like. I think this here is my favorite. And then we also have some other prototypes. So these are made of plastic. There's this one here that I'm doing too. This is called the Balance prototype from Canon Keys. It's a beautiful like lavender lilac color, whatever you want to classify this as. So again, very custom keyboards. Rare that we get to see something like this with a numpad on it. They're very cool.
And so do you eventually sell these, or is it just to let other people know what the experience is like working with the kits?
It really depends on, I guess, the direction either the vendor wants to go or a client. So it kind of gets broken down into three different, I guess, tiers. Either it's a client's commission because they don't want to do it themselves, which is completely okay. A lot of people don't want to buy all the materials you need to kind of assemble one of these things. So you have to solder, put things together, right? If it's a prototype unit, something like this, or an early look, sometimes we get to keep these, sometimes we send them back. But this is just more for advertisement. And then we give our thoughts and reviews on them too. And then sometimes it's a personal keyboard in which I kind of do whatever I want, sometimes silly things. Sometimes we mod them out of the norm. Like there's been a more recent mod where we put tape on the back of the PCBs, like literal masking tape, which alters the sound. So we can experiment more because it's my own board. Now I'm not afraid if I'm going to break it, right? But yeah, it kind of gets classified into those three areas.
How many keyboards do you own?
Me personally?
Yeah, you.
Too many. 70, I think 70 plus personal boards right now.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And are they all in play?
No.
Or how many are in play?
Well, I don't even have enough keycap sets to put on all these boards, so a lot of them are just kind of sitting like this, like you saw with this guy, like in a shelf. But I typically rotate between 2 or 3. Like right now I'm using, I'll unplug it and show you. I'm using a Geonworks Frog keyboard, which is like a very, I dressed it up very classy with white on black keycaps, little brass weight on the back there. But that's what I'm using right now, and it's a TKL, so it has the arrow keys. But a lot of times TL uses 60%, which doesn't have any of those things, kind of like, again, like we saw with this car over here. Just a standard 60. I use this more for when I'm playing games or something like that. Takes up less desk space.
So we have a question on one of the kits you showed. I believe the violet lilac one. Abram is asking if it's 104 key, and if you could tell us again who makes it.
So that would be from Canon Keys, and that's an F rowless, so it doesn't have the F keys on the top. I'm not too sure the key count exactly, but that would be from Canon Keys there. It's called The Balance. I think it's releasing on Friday, if I do remember correctly.
Oh, very soon. Awesome. So, Andrew, if you were to, let's say, commission a keyboard mod, and I know we all of us at Tom's Hardware look at lots of wild keyboard things that we can never imagine spending the money on, from artisanal keycaps to really rare switches. But for Andrew, if you can make a keyboard mod, money no object, everything no object, what would some of your wildest wants be?
I feel prepared for this. I've been looking a lot and just being like, oh, what if I could? And I mean, I think I'd want like the 84 key, like where you keep your arrow keys, but they're jammed in there. My big question would really be on the switches. Like right now, I have some blues and they're really clicky and I like that they're loud, but I've also been working at home for 18 months and I know what a pain in the butt that is. And obviously you're getting into things that like your standard browns are a little, they're controversial. And I've done reds, they're okay. But I really like this click. I don't know what kind of cool, expensive keycap I would go into that's clicky and the clicky key du jour these days. That's really what I'd wonder. And also, if I could find them where someone else has already lubricated them, because I don't want to deal with that.
Well,
So
I think
that's my suggestion.
With clicky keys, with clicky switches, you really don't necessarily have to lube those unless you want the added smoothness. But with clickies, there's lots. I know there's Jades, which I really like, and clickies are not as common, I'd say, as some of the other switches like linears and tactile switches. I think Brown's got a really bad rep for some reason. Honestly, if you lube Browns and like mod them correctly, Browns actually sound and feel pretty good. I do think that maybe the bad rep kind of got started with the fact that it's a lighter tactile, doesn't really have that harsh tactile bump to it. But honestly, if you are looking for a nice sound profile, not necessarily clicky, or you don't want some of that feedback that a clicky key, switch has, I'd say even like a nice linear, properly modded, can sound really, really great. And there's tons of different linears. I'll be honest, it's very rare that you get a bad switch these days. But there's tons, and you don't have to spend a whole lot. Like there's no rare thing that only restocks once a year. There's lots in the market.
I'm curious. The other thing I had been looking at, and I know to some keyboard enthusiasts, this is an absolute sin. But there are some, and these are typically already pre-built, though I see some people mod them. But the idea of the wireless mechanical keyboard, there's not many. I know Keychron makes some, Epo Maker has been trying some. And obviously, a lot of those ones where like people group buy them and they're aluminum, and that might not work with Bluetooth. But have you seen any of those? What are your thoughts on those?
I've got one right here.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Bluetooth. Yeah, no, Bluetooth, there's nothing wrong with. Like I own some keyboards where you can convert them into Bluetooth. I just haven't done it just because I like cables. Honestly, if someone's actually going out of their way to tell you that like, hey, this isn't allowed in the keyboard community, I think they have like a very weird conception of what the keyboard community is. Honestly, if you're enjoying wireless keyboards, then you enjoy wireless keyboards, right? I don't think there's anything bad about them at all. I know the polling rate on a lot of our PCBs in the custom world are pretty low anyways. So I can't really see that being, a big difference. If you're a competitive gamer and you need like every, nanometer of I guess edge that you can get, then maybe don't go with one. But for everyday use, it's totally
not that
fine. Yeah, neither am I.
Yeah, we're seeing some more wireless mechanical keyboards from like mainstream gaming companies. Razer has released a couple this year. I just showed the Logitech one I've used. I like though a lot of them are including the option to do Bluetooth or dongle connection for that exact purpose because the lag is still noticeable when gaming, not really when typing. I use Bluetooth connection almost always when I'm working, and I obviously do a lot of typing as an editor and writer. So yeah, we talked about Andrew's modding wishes, but Alex, what are you seeing in terms of like trends right now? Like, what are the biggest trends going on in modding, or what are people asking for? What's taking off?
I think things like the tape mod and just other little things that you can experiment with, I think that's coming back into play. I do feel like for a while it was kind of, hey, if you just lube your switches and lube your stabilizers, that's good enough. But we're starting to see some more, I guess, thought process go into it. In terms of trends, I'd say the biggest trend we're seeing right now is the trend of people want budget. People want entry level things that are not going to cost them $500, because like a lot of things in the keyboard community, they can get pretty expensive. Just a kit without switches and keycaps can sometimes run you all the way up to 350 to 500 US dollars, and that's not including shipping some of the times too. So we're seeing things like the Cara. We're seeing things like I have an Icky somewhere here. I don't know where I put it, but it's an Icky. There's tons of different boards now that are running for sub $200. We've even seen some for $120 to $99. Like Novel Keys has some that are a really great value too, that can still give you that custom experience without having to really dig deep into your wallet and spend a ton of money on a keyboard that you may or may not like. So it gives room to I think maybe that's like the best word, is like it's the gateway into the custom keyboard world. I think that's the biggest trend right now.
I mean, on our end, from the editorial side and covering what's coming out, it's like the names and new switches, be it from well-known companies or newcomers or companies that used to only make keyboards. Like everyone's making switches or new ones seemingly every day. I was actually looking at your YouTube page, Alex, and you've been working with some switches I haven't even heard of before.
Yeah.
You just did one with Ashkeeb's Arrowlight switches. Never heard of that before. So how do you, as a modder, because obviously it's important for you to know what's available and what's being released as well, how do you stay on top of all of these different switch types and also figure out which ones are actually relevant or desired for the projects that you're working on?
Well, if you want the honest truth, I don't. I don't keep up with all the switches. There's just too many, and they come from. So a lot of these switches, they can be named like, we'll make up company names, like I don't know, Boxlight 24 key switch. I don't know, making up things. They can rename all these things, but there's a manufacturer, like there's a parent company to all of these things, and they're only coming from a handful of these parent companies. So a lot of the times when you see these new switches, maybe they've just put a new spring inside of it or some sort of different spring weight. Maybe they've changed the actual housing material. So instead of like again, we'll just make some stuff up here, a polycarbonate, they're using a PME plastic or something like that, right? Or a palm plastic. So it really depends on kind of the material the housing is, but it's still the same switch. And that might alter the sound a little bit, might alter the feel a little bit. But ultimately, the switch is still going to perform the same. Now, there is obviously people like different materials. They like different sound profiles. But I think a lot of people, even getting into the hobby, they hear a sound test on YouTube and they go, my keyboard's going to sound like that when I'm going to buy this switch. That's not the truth at all. The truth is the keyboard you buy is going to alter that sound just as much as the switch, the plate material too. So the reason I don't keep up with it is because I found a switch, I find switches that I like personally, and I will experiment with new ones. But then I kind of lean, okay, well, I'm very comfortable with this switch. I'm very happy with it. So why would I switch off, right? But I do think that there's just so many switch names, and I think finding the switch that you like is definitely harder now. But there's not really a whole lot of difference. Like linears are still linear. They're still going to be smooth when you lube them. Just like tactiles, maybe the bump will be a little bit different between switches, but not a metric but ton of variance,
So what's the deal with these? Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I said it kind of like reminds me of sneaker culture almost. Some of the switches, like there's so many of them, and then like I was reading, like there's the you probably heard of these, the banana splits, like going on resale, like far more than they would typically cost. Just like it's really gone wild.
Yeah, it's getting people. It might also be the fault of like what's hyped and stuff like that, but people will lean on something that might sound good in like a video, or maybe hearsay these sound really good. But like there's also like the flip side of the coin. People hate certain things too. But I think it's just more, if you can find what you like be happy with it. And it is very much a hobby of preference and discovery. So if you can find what you like and you can discover what you like and enjoy that journey while you do so, it's a very enjoyable process, and that's why I like it so much.
So how did you come on the Ash Cubes Oral Lights? Like, what, did they have something that that stood out to you that made them worth trying?
They're a sponsor of mine, actually, so they sent me out those
Okay.
switches. But there's other switches too. Like, I think there's one, if you scroll way down the YouTube, that was like the TTC Wild switches, which have like a different stem on them. They're very nice. Like, again, they're all, once you lube all these linear switches, they all end up feeling just as smooth as the last one, with the exception of maybe one or two in the entire lot of switches that I've tried. But sound profile wise, yeah, they do change. But smoothness wise, they all feel like linears. They all feel the same to me.
Right. Well, we have some questions from the viewers, and if you have any questions, definitely drop them in as well. We have a question asking, Alex, what do you think of SA keycaps, and are there any that you would recommend?
I love SA keycaps personally.
Oh.
SA keycaps are a taller keycap. So, for example, do I have a keyboard that's fully built here? I do. So I have this keyboard here, which uses cherry profile. So SAs are much taller, right? So they're going to produce a different sound profile plus a different typing feel. I personally think that SA keycaps sound phenomenal. They might not be for everyone because they are a lot taller in terms of height. So it might be a little bit weird or a learning process to use them, but I love them personally. I think they're great. In places where I recommend to buy them, well, Signature Plastics is one of my favorite brands to buy from for those. I think their website is, oh goodness, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they have their own website. I think it's pimpmykeyboards.com, like quite literally.
How could you forget that?
Yeah, how could I with such a unique naming scheme?
So what else do we have? We have MJ asking, how can I get these keyboards? So I'm not sure if they're referring to the kits or your own mods that you've done, but why don't you tell us? Do you have a place you'd recommend for people to buy kits and or to get stuff that you've worked on?
I think this is like a big conversation, but I'll try to shorten it as much as I can. Keyboards are usually done in a few different ways. Like, they sell in a few different ways. So for example, like these Karas, these are sold in a group buy format, an unlimited group buy format, meaning we'll just use X number of days, so 30 days to buy this keyboard. And after that, you won't be able to buy it again unless they open up that group buy. So that's done in a group buy fashion. There's also first come, first serve, which means that either the keyboards haven't been made yet, or maybe they have been like in stock. But a limited number of those keyboards will be sold. It's very much like the shoe world. Those you'd have to like follow the keyboard, follow the vendor, know when it's going to drop, and then rush and race to go spend your money. And then there's also in-stock units too, which it's very rare that you can find those for keyboards anyways. I think Novel Keys might have some NK65. There's might be some other extras of things, but again, those are done in batches. So if they run it now, you're going to have to wait for them to be produced again. That'd be the biggest thing. There's not a lot of other ways to get these things. Like, you can go to Mech Market, which I guess this is the alternative way. And like you were saying about the switches, some sell, for copious amounts of extra dollars. You'd have to go and buy something off of Mech Market. So for example, there are keyboards that might have retailed for $350 from a vendor that might now sell for $1,000+, which I don't personally recommend. Like, if you love the keyboard and have the money, then go for it. But there's lots of keyboards that get released. You kind of just have to follow things in the hobby. And there's great websites for that too.
I can't believe I almost forgot to ask you this, Alex. We ask a lot of people who come on the show this question, and it might be hard for you to answer, but what is your favorite switch, mechanical switch, if you had to pick one?
Well, I like these switches called Raids right now. They have a long stem pole. So it actually bottoms out with this like really nice clack, which I really like. And they come stock with my preferred spring weight, which is around 50 to 60 grams. So once I lube them and film them, I don't really have to do anything else to them, which is nice. Like I don't have to swap out a spring to something else I like. I don't have to swap out the top housing. I like them the way they are. Well, after lubing and filming, but those are my favorites right now. But there's tons. Like I've been really enjoying these things called Gatoron cap switches, which are a new mold, new spin on the way that MX switches typically work. So I've been really enjoying those. But raids are my favorite so far.
More switchers I haven't tried out yet. The list just keeps growing. We'll have to keep trying out all the switchers eventually. So yeah, if you have any other questions for Alex, drop them in. He'll be hanging out with us for the remainder of the show. In the meantime, Andrew, I know this week you tested Intel's latest Nook bare bones PC kit, the Nook 11 Extreme kit, also known as Beast Canyon. I don't know which name I like better. They're both pretty ferocious. So the kit comes with an Intel Core i9 11900KB and an epic RGB skull that you guys just have to see. Andrew, what can you tell us about the Nook 11?
Sure. Well, for those of you watching it live, here is the aforementioned skull. It's also got some underlighting, which I like. I am not a fan of the skull, which I'll just get out of the way immediately. I turned it off in the software. I was like, I can't stare at this. It's like very much like of a certain gamer aesthetic, which like I love playing video games. I don't like the skull. So that went off. But so yeah, this thing is, I mean, you could see it's pretty small. It's an 8-liter case. It's bigger than the Nook 9 Extreme kit, but there's an advantage there in that that was only able to support very few graphics cards, and this can support graphics cards up to 12 inches. I've seen pictures of people putting in full-size Founders Edition GPUs from NVIDIA in there. So you can get a much larger variety of parts in here, which is really good. We have it and we reviewed it as a full system, which is not how you're going to get it if you buy it. So they have Core i7 and Core i9 models. The Core i9 model we have would typically be 1350 on its own, but ours came as a review unit with an RTX 3060 in it, as well as 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 500 gigabyte Sabre Rocket SSD. But that's the thing, is when you get it, it's not going to have any of those things. It's not even going to have Windows. It's going to just be this chassis, the Nook element, which we'll talk about in a second, and that's it. And you're going to have to go in there and you're going to put in your own RAM and you're going to put in your own storage. And that's, to some people, is a draw, right? Some people really like putting the things together. To others, it's going to be really expensive to pay $1,350 for just that. With everything else we had, it gets closer to $2,500. So that's partially because the graphics card market is so crazy today. But this is the second time we've seen the Nook element, which is inside here. And what that thing is, it's almost like a little cartridge. I don't want to call it like a Nintendo 64 style thing, but it's like the Nintendo 64 version of a computer. Now there's a baseboard and you plug in the whole computer like a cartridge, and it has the RAM and the storage and the CPU in there. So you can just straight up open it up, plug it in, and you're ready to go. And in theory, like the next time one comes around, you can go and you can take this one out and you can plug that one in, and now bam, you've upgraded your computer. And it allows for this really small size. So that's really cool.
Now we have a divisive RGB skull on our hands. Alex, what do you think about the RGB accent here?
I used to be so into RGB stuff. Now I just could care less. I don't know if it's just an aesthetic change. I do think that the whole computer industry has been seeing an aesthetic change.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the purpose of it? I mean, if for a device that's supposed to be so small, you're supposed to tuck that away somewhere. I don't really get it.
See, for me, I didn't mind. I like the underlighting because I just kept it on top of my desk right next to me because it's so small that I can really afford to do that. They have new software called the Intel Nook Software Studio. I saw it in a developer build, but they told me it's going to be in the Microsoft Store. And you can go in there, and besides seeing all of your speeds and feeds, you can also go and adjust the RGB lighting, including getting rid of the skull. And then one other weird thing, if we're going to keep talking about the skull, is that you may see it's held on by these 4 little screws. And you can actually take the plate off, and they have instructions for if you have the right materials and the right machinery, making it say whatever you want it to say, making your own little plate. I think that's a bit much. I think if you're paying $1,350 for a Core i9, it should maybe come with some options, or $1,150 for the Core i7. Maybe have one with the Intel logo. Maybe do something else. So, but of all the things that are interesting about this, at least you could turn the skull off. right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about that in general because you brought up the Intel logo. I was thinking, like, what is the skull's like relevance here? That's just like what they use for their Nook products typically, right? This skull.
I think so.
That's yeah, for their Nook gaming products, they use the skull. So they don't
Okay.
typically use that for like, they have all their like sort of office file products, which are kind of, I don't know, like less interesting.
Yeah, I mean it's
But
unique, but like I don't know, if I was like 14 maybe I could commit to a light up skull, but if it could be a different shape, I like that you could turn it off, but I wish I could kind of customize it my own without that whole process that you just explained. Like just go in the software and change it that way.
yeah, that
Um,
being said, if you turn it all off, you just have a black box, and that's pretty easy as far as that goes.
right.
It's
Um, So yeah, I think this is interesting because I do like small PCs, small form factor PCs because I live in a small space. I have a really small
right.
desk, I have a small workspace, and in general, like I like an efficient form factor. Like I like that it's small and that it doesn't take up much space and it's cute. Like it really, let's be real, it's a cute computer. But building one on my own is pretty hard because you have such like a tiny space to work in. Cable management, really the whole project in general just gets more challenging. So you mentioned the price here. Do you think there's a premium, right, in the pricing, but do you think it's worth it for how much time and money you would save building your own mini PC?
That's a tough question. I'm of the opinion that this is a little exorbitantly priced for what you get, because for 1350, for 1150, you could have a full computer. It might not have a Core i9 in it, but you could get the whole thing. And obviously, bare bones, like people, that is a certain hobby where people like doing it that way. But and also, you're getting the compute element enables this really small form factor, which is really cool. You could get an ITX build. You could build your own or buy your own ITX build. It will be a little bit larger than this, but you could probably get a much better deal on it. This is the perfect, like, this is a really good size. Frankly, I would, like, you can see mine. I have another build on the floor, like behind me, because my apartment's a mess, and it's big for the space I'm in. And the idea, I think, like, next time I build something, it will be smaller. I would consider, like, for me, like, I'm not the hardest of hardcore in everything I do. That, like, this could be something I have, but I wouldn't pay this much money for it.
What are your thoughts, Alex? Are you interested in these small PC kits or small PCs in general? And would you be
I
willing to
I
pay a little
am.
more? Yeah.
No, not for money though. Like I am interested in small form factor. I'm interested in customizing things. Like that's obviously a huge part of what I do. Um, I'm in the same boat. Like I read in chat too. It's someone saying what's uglier, the Nuck logo or the Razer logo. And like I'm in the same boat. Like for example, like I have a Razer mouse. The logo is atrocious. Like I don't even know why they would put a logo here. My hand's over it anyways, and no one's coming in my house going like, "Oh, geez, that's the Razer logo. I'm gonna go buy one right now." Like no one's doing that realistically, And like I've gone out of my way to get mice customized to get rid of all that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh, whoa, that is so cool. So I have a standard version of that here. And
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. Can you bring that up again?
Yeah, it's like, see how yours says Logi again. Like no
Oh, I'm
one's
so
gonna come.
upset.
Yeah, like no one's coming in my house and going like, oh, geez. Like, and again, this is if
Awesome.
someone wants to know what you have, they're gonna ask. That's like what I've found in this tech world thing. Like for me to like go and be like, oh, there's logos plastered on everything. It just kind of sucks. And even with the small form factor PCs, I'd rather have something that's like a generic, clean black box or just a box of some sort that I can build in, that I can customize, get the real custom experience than some, I guess, pre-made thing with a logo on it that like maybe I don't care for, right?
Yeah,
What
I
I
mean,
will say
I
is,
do actually go into people's houses and I'm like, wow, that's the Corsair K100 keyboard. But that's because I'm like a peripheral
yeah,
nerd and I
say
cover
that's
it
because
for.
we have problems.
Yeah, exactly. What were you gonna say, Andrew?
Okay. What I will say about this is I'm almost a little surprised it existed. Like when I was told that, like, oh yeah, we're making another Nook Extreme kit, because the Nook 9 Extreme kit came out last year, and it had the 9th gen. I want to say it was last year. It had the 9th gen processor. There were a couple of partners. Razer was one of them. I believe AData had one, though that was mostly the rebranded. the rebranded version of the Nook that existed. The Razer Tomahawk was one that apparently actually sold quite well until even like the KF console, which was the KFC branded thing, which never actually came out to my knowledge. Was the concept was designed around one of these kits, and the question was, is Intel going to invest in this, or is this something that Intel is going to jettison and we're never going to see it again? Well, I mean, here we go. There's one in here. I've opened it. It's there. It exists. And that gives me a little bit more confidence to recommend this one over the last one. So the last one, I never knew if there was going to be another one. And that's something that really matters in a kit like this. Like it's for people who are building their own and care about upgrading. Is there going to be another kit next year? Will there be one in the third year in a row? I don't know. It's still a little weird. But it gives me a little more confidence to say, hey, there is a history now. They have made a second one that suggests there could be a third. Whereas before I was like, could there be a second? Well, maybe, but I have no idea. So it is nice to see Intel putting work into the compute element, because that really shows that they're really doubling down on this form factor. They're really committing to it.
Yeah, I don't know about the bare bones kits in general, but definitely we've been seeing more mini PCs, small desktop computers coming out. And I think there's a bit of a trend there in terms of people at least looking for those sorts of PCs. So it's interesting on that side, but I don't know obviously how much Intel will invest in terms of these kits. But I actually have a tougher question for you, Andrew. I'm going to make you answer it because I know it's going to be hard for you. Alex B pointed
Sure.
out earlier, what is uglier, the Nook logo or the Razer logo? Little background, Andrew hates the Razer logo. He's always talking smack about it. What do you call it? You have like a term for it.
I believe I call it the lower back tattoo of gaming.
Yes.
Is that the one?
Makes sense.
There it is.
Yeah, kind of looks like that.
But it's funny. I was having this conversation. Literally, this is what I subject my wife to. I was having my conversation with her last night. I was like, God, if I had to rank these, like she doesn't remember all of these, but like, well, this one's really bad and Razer's really bad. But then you have like, there's HP. They have a diamond now. Is that too inoffensive? Is it not offensive enough? The Alienware head is plain, but it hasn't changed. So I guess like I kind of agree with Alex that most logos are bad, but I think these ones, the Razer one and the Nook one, are very specifically, let me show you that I play video games. And I think like those ones that are trying to be edgy ultimately don't start looking as good when you have adults who are really interested in gaming, but maybe don't only use it for gaming. Or, you have people who like thought that was cool a couple of years ago, but grow out of it. And I think it's easy to make a classy logo, or even like, I would love to say like Alex wants to not include one. You can't not include a logo on anything. It has to be there and it has to be RGB, right? Like here's my mouse. But I do think we have to start looking at systems and peripherals as things that are not just for kids. Like so many people of all ages, of like all across different lifestyles, they're all gaming, and we have to make hardware that really can like suit everybody. And I guess like being able to detach this is great, but it's not helpful if there aren't any other options. And like not everybody has something that like lets you cut through, like not everybody has a silk screen or a vinyl cutter to make something for this.
Right. Ruru2M brings up a hilarious comment that in terms of the Nook logo in this skull, it's for engineers going through a midlife crisis who want a motorcycle but couldn't fully commit. Just going to get a skull on their PC, which is funny because you can get a lower back tattoo as a midlife crisis move as well. So
you could do it. They've been doing this for years now. I mean, the first time I can recall it, though I'm sure there was before, it was they had made a Nook where they had, it was called KB Lake G. It had Intel's KB Lake processor with AMD graphics on it, and that was a big deal. And that I remember had a blue light up skull with red eyes, because blue and red. I'm just like, they're going to get rid of this. I'm like, oh, you could turn it off, thank God. But then like they haven't gotten rid of it. The last Nook had it. I'm sure there are people who really like this, and I'm offending them, right? Like, if you love this, great, but I don't. And it's funny to see like so many people actually talking about it, because I thought I was making like a minor joke in this review I was running. Oh, I hate this thing, it's got to go. But like it definitely catches people's attention, for better or for worse, and I think does color perceptions of a system.
Yeah, and many PCs are also to a degree about their appearance as well. So you slap a big skull on it, you've got a certain look going there. So I'm going to share a link to Andrew's review in the chat right now. So if you want to learn more about the Nook 11 Extreme Kit, aka Beast Canyon, yes, I said the full name. Check out that review definitely. So in the meantime,
the last thing is Beast Canyon's a funny. I should have said this earlier. Is a funny thing because it's the internal code name, and Intel has code names for everything. So, when you say like their current processors are Tiger Lake, that's a code name. For some reason, that really seems to stick with Intel products. So when this is referred to as Beast Canyon, it's because that was its long-held internal code name. It is the Nook 11 Extreme Kit, but people know, like people who follow this know it was Beast Canyon and will continue to call it Beast Canyon for years to come.
Yeah, we were talking about offending people. I'm sorry if you have a lower back tattoo. I'm sure it looks great on you. Rock on. Rock on. Alex, if you have one, I don't know. Honestly,
No.
your keycap logo would make a great lower back tattoo. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'd probably do it. Throw it in with the rest of my tattoos.
Yeah, just sneak it in.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone who's been watching. Please don't forget to like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Twitch channels, all that good stuff, so you can stay caught up with all the Tom's Hardware fun. And you can also listen to the show as a podcast. But before we go, big thanks to Alexotos for dropping by. Alex, for those who want to stay caught up with you and your modding, where can they go? Where can our viewers go?
Honestly, the easiest way to kind of look at all my stuff is just my website. It's just alexotos.com. But I think past that, Instagram, just Alexotos there, Twitch, Alexotos, YouTube. I think if you just search my name, I pop up. I don't know what my actual URL is anymore. But those are probably the easiest ways. My Discord, it's a partner Discord, so if you guys want to join that, you guys can too. But that's probably the easiest way you're going to keep tabs of what I'm doing.
And when do you do the live modding? I want to check that out.
So tonight we're doing a stream with Apiary Keyboards. We're going to be doing a kind of like look into what's new and available in the keyboard world. After that, I might do some modding, but it's typically Tuesdays, Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Well, thank you also to Andrew. I'll be bringing you a new name next time you're on the show. You can mark my words. Well, thank you again, everyone, for watching. That is our show. We'll see you next Thursday.